Good evening and welcome to the Sherdog Radio preview for UFC London. No, wait a minute. It is UFC Fight Night 191, also known as UFC Vegas 36, a 10-fight card that was, up until mid-July, still planned for somewhere in London. That obviously didn't pan out, but we have the card. It's taking place at the Apex. And true to its original design, it is packed with British fighters, has a number of fighters from continental Europe to boot, and then for whatever reason, two French Canadians. Who knows? With me, I'm Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Shillan, executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network and host of the Shillan and Duffy Show. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm looking forward to this card. I think anytime we have an afternoon card, it just makes me feel much better. I know I'm going to sleep. I love that they realized that this is such a heavy European card that they kept it on the good time for the Europeans. So Darren Till is real popular. Just made a lot of sense, and overall there's some pretty good prospects, and I'm looking forward to on this card. So, and the main event's good.
Yeah, same here. I'm down with the early card, and I mean, you and I have both been fans of this sport long enough that I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm happy that there's only 10 fights. Like, that's good. That's like a nice digestible chunk of MMA. Like, I never thought I'd be not wishing for more fights back in, say, 2003 when there was a 8-fight card every 4 months. But
7 fights. There was one prelim fight.
Yeah, but I mean, the kind of 12, 13 fight card we get every single weekend, I'm okay with just 10, to say nothing of the 19 fight Bellator cards that we'll get from time to time, where the whole prelims is but
remember the post limbs for Bellator?
Oh man, they love the post limbs. That was something Scott Coker brought over from Strikeforce, where he's like, we got to have Kimbo go on it right at 10 o'clock. So if there's still 3 fights to go, you're going on after the main event. Yep.
In fairness, though, that actually is the right thing to do.
Oh, it's fine.
Having the main event at a normal hour is I actually would if the UFC would break it up. If you want to say we have to, for some reason, some logistical reason, you have to start at 7 o'clock, then have a early prelims or prelims, and then make the hardcores happy by having them watch at 1 o'clock, watching, insert 2 prelim fighters, insert, Courtney Casey versus JJ Aldridge. I never thought of that. I never thought that it would make sense to put the I've been following the sport for I don't know how many years, almost 30 years now. It makes sense to put it at the end then.
It does. I mean, it's rough on those fighters that are in a swing fight. They're like, all of a sudden, oh, I'm fighting 3 hours later than I thought I was going to. But, other than that, yeah.
Well, then don't be a prelim fighter.
Hey, it's a cruel world out there.
Right.
Well, speaking of prelims, unless you got anything else, we'll just dive right into these bantamweights. First one out of the gate at UFC Vegas 36 is a bantamweight matchup between Jonathan Martinez and Marcelo Rojo. Martinez, the 27-year-old from the Texas Panhandle, fighting out of Denver, Colorado, is 13-4 overall. He is 4-3 since joining the UFC back in late 2018. Fought most recently back in March, where he got knocked out in the second round by Davey Grant. That snapped a modest 2-fight winning streak for him over Thomas Almeida and Frankie Saenz. He will be taking on Rojo, the 33-year-old Argentinian training out of Tijuana, Mexico, is 16-7 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. Had his debut back in March as well, where he got knocked out in the third round by Charles Jourdain, who fights a little bit later on this card. He actually appeared on the 3rd season of Tough Latin America, didn't join the UFC right away out of it, but is a veteran of Combate Americas, now Combate Global. Odds on this one do slightly favor Martinez. He's out there minus 165. You can get Rojo at plus 140, plus 145 or so. Keith, how do you like this bantamweight matchup? Who do you think wins and how?
Yeah, this is a good fight to kick off the card. I think both guys are entertaining fighters. Like I don't think either guy is going to ever challenge for a title or anything like that. But they're definitely entertaining. We'll start with the bigger name, Martinez, southpaw. He has a really Muay Thai style to his game, sharp striking. He does lack power, but as I said in the last time his fight, to his credit, he did briefly hurt Thomas Almeida, who's known for his striking. Works behind a jab. Side note, I seem like I say that for almost every fighter. The jab went from the no one throws a jab in MMA to pretty much everyone does, and then now we have to establish who has good jabs compared to who throws a jab. But back to Jonathan Martinez. I like that he targets the body. That's something he likes to do. A lot of kicks up the middle, teep kicks. He mixes in his combinations, punches, kicks well. Occasionally, it's so different. He fights much different than his personality. He doesn't have much personality, but he fights and exciting. Like he'll throw in a flying knee to close the distance. Not the best wrestler. We've seen him take him down. Almost no offensive wrestling. He doesn't really look to wrestle. And as I say this every time someone gets knocked out in their last fight, I am a little worried about his chin, as Davey Grant did knock him out in his last fight. Now move over to Rojo. Did I say right? Rojo.
Yep, perfect.
I like that he has a lot of experience. I mean, this guy, I think he's like 30. You said 33 years old?
Yep.
Yeah, he's 33 years old. He has like 25 or so professional fights, even though he just made his UFC debut. So you like that. He's been in a lot of different scenarios because of that. On the feet, very aggressive striker, a busy jab. Right hand is his best strike. He's one thing I like about him is that he switches stances in mid attack. Something that the very best strikers do, kind of like cut in different angles when he's coming in. Good power. I wouldn't say he's a knockout artist, but I'd say he's like plus power guy. Like he's got stinging power. Throws a lot of knees up the middle. Adds a lot of calf kicks. He was hurt to the body though in the past. I've seen some regional fights. That's kind of like a weakness. Was also hurt and knocked out in his last fight. But the difference in him and Martinez are very similar, but the one difference on Rojo, I think he's actually more well-rounded. He will sneak in some takedowns, and he's got 6 submission wins on his record, so he is a threat if it hits the ground. As far as prediction go, this is a good fight right out the gate. I'm going to go with Batista. He's younger, and I think he's looked better in the UFC, and he's still at that age where I expect him to make some improvement, while Rojo's probably at the age where you start seeing decline. So just being younger, fighting a little bit better competition, and just having that overall better pedigree. But if Rojo can turn this into a grappling matchup or just more of a usual mixed martial arts fight of where we see some grappling, we see some clinch fighting, a little bit of everything, that's his best avenue of victory. But if it's strictly a stand-up battle, I'm going to give Batista a slight edge. But it was one of those ones where I was leaning way more on Batista's side before his film study. Now
Martinez. Right. Yeah. Martinez.
Oh, who am I calling Batista? Who the hell's Batista?
It's that big wrestler guy that like.
Yeah. When did I get Batista?
I don't know. But we knew who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I apologize. Yeah. You know what it is? Who's that?
Mario Batista.
Yeah. Who's that?
He's a UFC flyweight bantamweight.
Yeah. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah. They look alike. I don't know. Do they look alike?
A little bit.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go with Martinez. I apologize that. We're taping at an unusual hour for us, so that's why everything's all messed up.
Yep. I'm with you here. I am leaning Martinez. I can't believe he has 7 fights in the UFC already, because his UFC debut where he fought Andre Sukumtat on like really short notice, it was a little after I started working at Sherdog, and I just remember thinking this guy doesn't have a whole lot of upside. Came in, you kind of pointed out, or I think you did, he doesn't really present as much of a plus athlete, and that's a rough look at bantamweight, because the top bantamweights are, for the most part, are outstanding athletes. They're just really physically strong, fast guys. But he's turned into a good fighter. He's 4-3 in the UFC. Aside from that short notice debut, he's only lost to good people, and he's beaten some pretty good people. He's been a pleasant surprise, and despite all this, still just 27 years old. Now, training out of Factory X. That's a really good team for developing his kind of skill set. There's one thing about this fight, and there's another fight on this card that's like this that I'll mention when we get to it. But the Sherdog Fight Finder has Martinez listed at 5'7" and Rojo listed at 5'8". I'm going to be surprised if Martinez isn't actually taller than Rojo. And I've never seen them in the same room together, but it's just that Martinez fights like a tall, rangy bantamweight, where Rojo just comes across fighting like a more compact guy. But I do think this is going to be a bit of Rojo, coming forward. Martinez is a pretty patient fighter, but it'll be Rojo coming forward. If he does turn to wrestling and trying to grapple, I agree with you. It's a whole different fight, but I expect this will probably take place mostly on the feet. And it should be a banger, mostly because Rojo is going to force the issue. Martinez is willing to sit and wait if his opponent isn't coming at him. That's not going to be a problem here. And I do think he's going to have enough on the feet to frustrate Rojo, win at least 2 out of 3 rounds, and walk away with the decision. But again, big caveat there, as you pointed out, if Rojo decides he wants to try to take Martinez down and he's able to do so, all bets are off. It's a whole different fight. I don't see that actually playing out that way. So give me Martinez by decision as well. Next up, it is a middleweight contest between Dalcha Lungiambula and Marc-Andre Barriault. Lungiambula, the 36-year-old from South Africa, is 11-2 overall. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC as a multi-division EFC champion from South Africa. He beat Daquan Townsend in his UFC debut, lost to Magomed Ankalaev via one of the top knockouts of 2019, that front kick to the jaw, and came back in January of this year and took a unanimous decision over Marcus Perez. He'll be taking on Barriault. The 31-year-old from Quebec is 12-4 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. Came into the UFC and lost his first 3 fights in a row to Andrew Sanchez, Christoph Yatko, and Jin Young Park. Beat Oscar Biahota. That fight later overturned to a no contest, but won again back in March, knocking out Abu Azatar in the 3rd round at UFC 260. Odds on this one slightly favor Barriault. He is -155. You can get Lungiambula around +130, +135 or so. I guess the biggest surprise to me about Dalcha Lungiambula is that guy can make middleweight at all. I mean, he
looks like a heavyweight.
He looks like a heavyweight, and he literally was a heavyweight. He was EFC heavyweight and light heavyweight champion, I believe. Now, the trick about Lungiambula, kind of like William Knight, is he's not a super tall guy. It's just, if you don't have someone standing next to him to put him in perspective, again, like Knight, he looks like a stack of bowling balls.
Regardless of the win, shouldn't that be the next fight?
Oh my goodness!
like I just, as you said that, I never thought of that too, but like, how fantastic would that be?
And they're kind of at the same place in the division, honestly.
Yeah,
like
especially if Lungiambula wins.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. We should have a drinking game for like you have to hit a shot for every single time I interrupt you, and then every time you interrupt me, like, you got to drink like a whole keg because you never interrupt me. And I'm terrible. I'm terrible. I do it all the time. I apologize. Carry on.
Hey, I prefer the back and forth than just like, wait. It's good. But I mean, if Lungiambula and Knight ever fight, one, they're going to have to reinforce that octagon. Just build a titanium octagon or something. But a little surprising that he can make middleweight. Obviously, at middleweight, he is just an absolute tank of a human being. He's taken on Barriault. I was a little surprised that Barriault was the slight favorite here. But the thing is, aside from the fact that I was surprised he didn't get cut after losing his first 3 UFC fights, he beat Piahota, beat Azatar. He seems to have turned a corner. He's not a super plus athlete, but he is a physically very strong guy. He seemed to have the advantage in just straight horsepower over most of his opponents. I imagine this fight is going to, first round, it's going to be Lungiambula taking the round, probably landing some haymakers, maybe scoring a takedown. He will like to get in on his opponent's hips and just hurl him and fling him to the canvas and jump on and start pounding on him. The question will be whether Barriault can weather that and if like Lungiambula is going to get tired fast from exertion. He comes out like a house on fire. I am picking that not to happen. Like, I know Lungiambula is the slight underdog here, but I think he's just going to have enough to come out and finish Barriault early. Give me Dalcha Lungiambula by first round TKO, probably just, ground and pound. But if it goes past the first round, it turns into Barriault's fight pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think your assessment was really good. The breakdown, I that's exactly how I kind of see this fight. Even though I was a little distracted because I kept thinking about him versus William Knight, Dalcha versus William Knight. You said that like rebuild the ring and have like titanium. I actually think it would be even better to have like the first, like do it WWE style, like do like the first like backstage fight where they have to fight each other. In that walkout area, make it like a street fight because I don't know if it'd be possible to make a cage strong enough for those two dudes. Like anytime with the William Knight. Now I don't know how we got William Knight really into this one, but William Knight when he wrestles, like I've seen him on the regional scene, and I just am assuming the cages in the regional scene aren't as strong. And you see him when he just bull rushes the guy, and they slap in that cage, and everyone in the how the regional scene at the front row was like basically right there, and like. Yeah. A whole section of people dive back, and then they expected it to go right through the cage. Anyways, I just assume, like, when you look at Dalcha, you just assume he has the same power. You mentioned it. He's humongous for the weight class. On the feet, he's not a very technical striker. Kind of throws from his hips, different things. But he's effective nonetheless because he's so explosive and he's got huge power. I mean, if he touches you, he can put you to sleep. But he loads up on everything, and he kind of waits. He doesn't have the highest output. He kind of waits for the big blow. Like he's trying to land the perfect punch to end the fight. Defensively, he does a lot of pairing with punches, which I like. That was when I did a lot of boxing. That's my style of defense too. But he backs straight up. So if you pressure him, you can get him to the fence and clinch on him. But you get to the clinch on him, that's not a strong area for most of his opponents because he's so physically strong. Two, he's a judo black belt that was on the national team member, which we don't see as judo enough. He's not Hector Lombard, as we say with high level judo, doesn't he? He will use it. He has trips and throws, but not as much as we think he should if he wants to win.
Hey man, we saw Abdul Razak Al Hassan break out that judo just last week.
Yeah,
the infamous like kick the man's head off like judo throw.
It was actually he was trying to trip him. He was trying to trip him.
He just tripped him a little too high.
The inside trip. But solid takedown defense. If he gets taken down, he's so big, it's hard. He has that like Derek Lewis, like I'm just gonna stand up, or also that like remember when Chuck Liddell used to say like I don't care if you punch me, I'm just gonna stand up. Kind of the same thing. But he struggled. Well, if you can hold him down, he doesn't have the best technique because you remember, like I said this last time in judo, they have quick stand-ups. It's like 15 seconds you're back on the feet. So that's probably why he just kind of explodes up, but he slows down, as you mentioned, to go back against like Ankalaev, he really slowed up in that fight. And then the last fight against Marcus Perez, he was way ahead and then kind of had to hold on to a victory over Marcus Perez, was beaten up in the third round. And move over to Barriault, very aggressive on the feet. He's I just talked about William Knight being a bull. Like Barriault's the same way. He just bulls forward. He just walks through punches. The way to beat him is actually kind of force him back, that's actually where Jung Park had best success with kind of pressuring him. His best strike is his right hand, though he can be a little right hand happy, looking for it over and over and over again. He's also a headhunter, just always looking for the knockout. He has good power though. Defensively, he has a very high guard defense, very boxing style to it. Strong calf kicks, though he kind of back to his defense. He pillars a little bit, trying to hide behind his punches. I don't know if Dalcha's the guy you want to hide behind your punches and trust your forearms because like a punch from him, he could break it. I wrote down legs calf kicks. I wrote down twice. I don't know, maybe that means something. But he's been improving his wrestling. He can sneak in a takedown, and I actually thought he showed some really good takedown defense against Yako. And his biggest attribute in this fight will be his cardio. So you're going with an early stoppage for Dalcha. I'm not going with an early stoppage. I think it's a really intriguing matchup. I can see Barriault simply outlasting Lungiambula and taking over in the later rounds, kind of like withstanding the flurry that you think is going to happen and then winning. However, I'm not going to go with that. I hate Barriault's defense, so I expect him to eat a lot of big shots from Lungiambula. I don't think Lungiambula is going to put him out. I expect this fight to look a lot like the last fight for Lungiambula, the Marcus Perez one, where I think Lungiambula is going to win the first 2 rounds and then really be gassed out, and Barriault's going to put on a hell of a third round. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get a draw in this fight. We've never picked a draw. Don't worry, man. I'm not picking a draw. I will go. I think Barriault's going to have a lot of volume. I don't know why I'm stalling this answer so much, but I'll go with Lungiambula hanging on to a very close decision in a slight upset.
Next up on the UFC Fight Night 191 prelims is a 150-pound catchweight fight between featherweights in Julian Erosa and Charles Jourdain. Erosa, the 32-year-old from Washington State, is 25-9 overall. He is 3-5 across 3 different stints in the UFC. I don't know this for sure, but he feels to me like the first fighter to enter the UFC through the Ultimate Fighter, through Dana White's Contender Series, and then once again as a late notice COVID replacement. That's kind of the trifecta of backdoors into the UFC. He's tried them all with mixed results. Again, 3-5. But on this most recent run in the UFC, he is 2-1, and he has wins over solid fighters in Sean Woodson and Nate Landwehr. That little winning streak came to an end at the hands of Sung Woo Choi, who knocked Erosa out just back in June at a UFC on ESPN, Korean Zombie versus Ige. He'll be taking on Jourdain. The French Canadian is 25 years old. He's 11-3-1 overall. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC back in 2019. He did knock out Rojo, as mentioned before, back in March. Jourdain is the favorite here. He's minus 175. Erosa plus 155 on the comeback. I like the story of Julian Erosa. I was really glad when he came back to the UFC for his 3rd try, and his first 2 runs in the UFC were miserable, and actually beat 2 good fighters right out of the gate, again, in Sean Woodson and Nate Landwehr. They're both guys that I can't speak for you, but I think we both think of them as guys that, at the very least, they're UFC material. They're real UFC featherweights, or should be a lightweight in the case of Woodson. But the problem for me with Erosa is he is really susceptible to his opponent's offense. I can't think of any other way to put it than he gets highlight reeled by his opponents a lot. He has a ton of fights. I mean, it's pretty interesting that a 32-year-old that's, he's kind of bounced into the UFC a few times, has almost 40 fights, but 5 knockout losses for a featherweight is a lot. I just remember him getting erased by a head kick by Julio Arce. For a 6'1" featherweight, he does not use his reach well to keep opponents off. Well, all I need to say about that is he got knocked out by Artem Lobov. If you're 6'1" with as long arms as Julian Erosa has, and you got knocked out by Artem Lobov, you don't fight long. We're talking about the guy with probably the shortest reach of any man in UFC history. The problem for him is that's a really bad matchup for Charles Jourdain, because Charles Jourdain's whole story is he is an explosive finisher on the feet and on the ground, super aggressive, super dynamic, but it hasn't always worked at a UFC level. Like the guys he was knocking out in TKO in Montreal, just they're not the kind of guys he's been facing in the UFC. But with the exception of Erosa, I think this is just going to be a vintage performance for Charles Jourdain. He's shorter, and he fights shorter. But this is just perfectly tailored for him. I think he's going to get inside on Erosa, land some stuff on the feet, hurt him, and probably knock him out in the first round. Give me Charles Jourdain in a likely performance of the night, winning performance.
Yeah. Jourdain he's so athletic. He's very fast. His nickname Air, and he lives up to it because he's extremely exciting. When you look at his last fight against Rojo, who's also on this fight, that fight was, before it ended, it was really fun and entertaining. I don't know if it's on our nomination list for Fight of the Year, but it probably should be. I think it was that good. He'll try like a flying knee, and I could see that. Like you talk about Erosa being a highlight reel for some guys. Like if Jourdain's going to get one, like he wants to get a flying knee knockout, like Julian Erosa might be the guy for it. Um, he'll be wild. I said this last time. He'll be wild to a fault. Like he puts himself in bad positions, but then he'll throw a punch, be so off balance, and then like spinning back fist his way out of it as he's tripping. He'll kind of overthrow his punches in time, and he's going to face a really good striker with power. He's going to put him out. When he stays within himself, though, he's really good. He's accurate. Straight left hand is really well punched. He loves his right hand uppercut, like lead uppercut that kind of sneaks in. Actually, something that Darren Till does from the southpaw stance. Hard kicks to the body, hard kicks in general, but especially to the body. He doesn't like being pressured. He's a guy who wants to work from distance, but there's moments where he'll just fight and throw down in a brawl. He has been hurt in the past. I mean, you go back to the Josh Kulabau fight. That was a guy that he was much more athletic than, much better fighter than, and still was hurt on the feet. We don't see him on the ground much, but he is a submission threat. He has 3 career submissions. Against Kulabau, he kept looking for his guillotine. He was defending stuff with his guillotines. And if you put him on his back, he's good to get back up. Now, Julian Erosa, he seems like he has a special place in your heart. He kind of has a special place in my heart too. Like I love that. I think we both kind of have a soft spot for these underdog guys. He's getting in the Darren Elkins club, where they're not that athletic, but it's just a nice story. He's big for the weight class. He's a big dude. He's long and lengthy. He's got a 76-inch reach. A guy that constantly switches stances. Fights at a blistering pace. He's a pressure striker that just breaks people with volume. I mean, the perfect example of that is the Sean Woodson fight. You're talking about a guy. You're talking about a difference in skill set between Julian Erosa and Sean Woodson. It's like, striking wise, not overall MMA, but in boxing, it's like humongous. And Julian Erosa just with his mindset and his pressure just mentally broke Sean Woodson. Mm-hmm. He's not a big puncher. Like he lacks punching power. Like he didn't break Sean Woodson with his power. He just kept. He's not your chainsaw. He's your axe. He's an axe to just keep chopping. He's a guy that he probably shouldn't be dragged into fights because he's got so many flaws defensively, but he loves it. He loves his teep kick. He throws hard kicks to the body. Will sneak a kick up to the head. But defensively, he lacks head movement, keeps his chin high in the air, back straight up, a big, huge target. He can sneak in a takedown. Go back to his Paddy Pimblett fight, who's also on this card. A weak takedown defense. Will jump on a guillotine instead of sprawling it, which is something I don't like. Will look like for subs off his back. Instead of scrambling to his feet. But his chin has been an issue. He's been knocked out many times. So I'm with you. Jourdain can play around sometimes, and he can have big moments of inactivity. But when he's on his game, he really can crack. And I just think this is the perfect stylistic matchup. So give me Julian Erosa.
Wait, so you have Erosa?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Give me Jourdain to knock out Julian Erosa.
Okay.
Sorry. First
fantastic.
Round.
Next up at UFC Vegas 36, it is the bantamweights. And as we mentioned off the top, this was a fight card originally intended for London. You can tell that because this is the first of 4 fights in a row featuring a former Cage Warriors champion. Undefeated, former bantamweight champ from Cage Warriors, Shore is 3-1 since joining the UFC. He also won 10 straight in Cage Warriors. He is a legend of that organization. But since joining the UFC back in late 2019, he's beat Noeline Hernandez and Aaron Phillips, both by submission, and Hunter Azure back in April of this year by split decision. He takes on Liudvik Sholinian, a veteran of The Ultimate Fighter Season 29. Several of his castmates fought last week. The 31-year-old out of the Ukraine is 9-1-1 overall, and this is, of course, his UFC debut. But he's fought in many major organizations, Bellator, LFA, M1. Nonetheless, Shore, a whopping favorite here, one of the biggest favorites on the card. He is minus 470. You can get Sholinian at plus 370 or plus 380 as the substantial underdog. I'll go ahead and toss this one to you first, if that's all right. I mean, this one obviously kind of set up as a showcase for Shore, but do you see it playing out that way?
Well, you know, Jack Shaw's my boyfriend. Like, I love this guy. This is the guy that I've been talking about for a long time. It is not. So he's 26 years old. So he's in that like golden age. I said last time he's not a great athlete, but he's so intelligent. Like I watched his fight against Hunter Asher, where he just kept putting himself in position to win a fight. He knows what he's good at, and he just goes to it. He's not worried about exciting anybody. But he's really good everywhere on the feet. He just marches down his opponent, works behind a jab, a lot of variety in his attacks. Goes to the body, goes to the head, leg kick, hooks, balance between attacking all the areas of the body. Good wrestler, good entries. He's relentless to get the takedown. If he doesn't get you down on the hips, he can get into the body lock, take you down that way. Just willing to inch around, slide by as he gets the cage. He's strong. He gets on your hips. We've seen a lot of him just picking up opponents, slamming them. Really good at just getting on your hips and causing a scramble and winning them. Chain wrestling together. If he's on top, he has like a little Habib in him where he'll just control a single limb and just stay pinned on you, kind of slowly wear you out. Like, I'm going to hold on to your knee in this position, or I'm going to hold on to this Navy ride and not let go of it until I can cover up the hips and slowly inch my way into a better position. Once he's in a better position, hard ground and pound, very opportunistic where you give him an inch and he's going to take you back. He's got 8 submission wins. And what I really dislike, he has a killer instinct. Like, you make a mistake against him, he's gonna end the fight right then. Move over to Liudvik. I like that he got a contract off the show. I mean, you go back to his fight against Ricky Turcos. That was a fantastic. I mean, both of his fights on the show. His fight with Mitch Raposo was actually really entertaining too. Liudvik, he's really big for the weight class. On the feet, he's a pressure striker who just marches forward. I didn't look at his reach. He just seems like a guy that looks like a guy that has a long reach. And he knows how to use it. Like, he closes distance with his punches. Like, he kind of throws in that dead space and just follows his punches into finally where he's backing you up with strikes that aren't landing. And then eventually you have nowhere to go. And he was landing. He was doing that against, even though he lost the fight, he was doing it against Ricky Turcos. He does lack punching power because he kind of just throws to be busy, not necessarily to hurt. He has a lot of on punches. But he's got a little bit of holes defensively. He avoids strikes by backing straight up if you pressure back on him. And he didn't, not against Turcos, because Turcos is not a great athlete. He's got a little Julian Erosa in him where he's just going to beat you with insane volume and toughness. But he really struggled with like a guy like Mitch Raposo, who is all of an athlete. He's a good athlete. He really struggled with the speed and the movement of Mitch Raposo, kind of really struggled to pick up his timing early. That's something that could be a big issue against Jack Shore. But he's a good wrestler. I mean, this is a Ukrainian national team member, good entries. He'll sometimes shoot without a setup. We saw that in the Turcos fight. But if he gets in, he's got solid top control to the point where he actually will stall out on top and kind of just try to, like he did against Mitch Raposo a lot, just kind of not doing much. So as far as prediction goes, styles make fights. And would you like? It's insane how big of a favorite.
Minus 475.
Like minus 475 Jack Shore. I'm the biggest Jack Shore. Well, I shouldn't say I'm the biggest Jack Shore shill because he has like a cult following. Like guys they actually tattoo themselves. Jack Shore is on fire. I don't have a Jack Shore tattoo, but like if there's tears of like I'm the next tear down. Like I'm all in on this dude. But this is a tough stylistic matchup for him. This is not a almost 5-1 favorite matchup for him. If I'm a betting man, I'd lay a slight bet on the Ukrainian to get an upset because I think the value is. What would you say the payback was on Liudvik?
You can get him around plus 380.
380. So $100 wins you $380. That's a good bet, especially like by decision. Like I don't know what him by decision is, but I'm sure it's probably plus 4 and change. Shore loves having the wrestling advantage, and that's and we've seen him take down good wrestlers. I mean, Hunter Asher has a wrestling background. In his first three fights in the UFC, I counted, he had 13 takedowns, which is extremely impressive in 3 fights. But I don't know if he has the wrestling advantage against Liudvik. That said, I'm still going to take Shaw. Like, I know everyone was waiting for me to take Liudvik as I'm setting it up. I'm going to take Shaw because he's so intelligent, and I feel like he's going to find a way to win. Like, maybe he looks at the Turcos fight and realizes, like, I don't need to get takedowns against Liudvik. I just need to make him work, make him defend takedowns, make him, even if he takes me down, make sure I scramble back up and just make him work and just beat him with volume, because that's what Turcos did. And, like, I see Jack Shore doing that. So give me Shore in a much closer fight than people expect.
Yeah, I'm with you on all your points there. It is funny that his nickname is Tank. When you think of a guy whose nickname is Tank, you just expect him to like be built like, Chad Mendez or something, just like this little, just like burly, rectangular wrestler. And he's really not. But he's relentless, opportunistic, and as you pointed out, very, very intelligent. And that's good because in Sholinian, he's taking on another guy kind of like Hunter Azure, who's going to probably be a physically stronger guy, at least in the early going, and probably a better wrestler just on kind of straight credentials. Like, on the mats is probably a better wrestler than him. But I can't pick Sholinian, to be sure. I expect that Shore will have a harder time in the earlier going than you would expect of a 5-1 favorite. But I figure, I mean, there's every chance that he just wins a striking match and this doesn't go to the ground much. But if it does, I think he's going to find a way to take Sholinian's back and choke him out. As you pointed out, he has a killer instinct, lightning fast back takes. He's one of those guys that he's not super fast and explosive on the feet, but just really fluid on the ground. He has a ton of rear naked chokes, and most of them at the UFC level as well as at the Cage Warriors level. He was on his opponent's back and locking it up before the guy knew what was going on. He's, very, very dangerous grappler. Give me Jack Shore by, I'm going to say, 3rd round submission.
Ben, let me ask you this question before we move on from this fight, because I think this is a fight that a lot of people are really intrigued by, just because a lot of people are intrigued by Jack Shore. Vegas is making him such a big favorite that it seems like it's a step down in competition for him. Do you agree that this is a step down in competition? Because I don't. I think it should be a slight uptake in competition.
Compared to
Hunter, and I like Hunter Asher. That was his last fight.
Yeah. I would say that it's. I'd say it's pretty similar. Both of them good wrestlers. Azure a little bit more of the tank type compact guy. Both guys that I would expect Shore to have the advantage in cardio and pace in later rounds, but yeah, I certainly don't think Sholinian's a step down from Azure.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Jack Shore is, I said I love this guy. I really think he's special, but this should only be one Tank in MMA, and that's Tank Abbott. Everyone say what they want, but at one time Tank Abbott was like the fan favorite in the UFC.
Oh yeah, he was this. I mean, he was the scariest dude. Like, even at the time, like, nobody thought he was the best fighter in the world. They just wanted to see him fight.
I remember when he was at the Ultimate 2 when he fought Don Fry in the finals, even though was it Mark Hall threw the semifinals match against Don Fry just to have him all fresh in the finals. But that was the same card. Was it Cal Warsham that he was trying to throw out of the cage?
Yes.
Yeah. I still remember me and a bunch of friends watching that one, going crazy for Tank Abbott. Anyway, sorry. Side note, we talk about, we're bringing everyone on this. William Knight, Tank Abbott. Dude, imagine Tank Abbott versus William Knight. Tank Abbott is prime versus William. That would have been fun. Yeah. I mean, William Knight would have killed him, but
yes.
But I mean,
William Knight trains.
No, yeah. Listen, guys. Like you said, we're taping much earlier than we normal, so this is why we're off the rails. I apologize. Ben is as professional as always, and I'm trying any way possible to get this off the rails.
Hey, it makes for a nice dynamic. So you had Shore as well. Did you have him by decision or?
Yeah, I got him in a close decision.
There you go. Two picks for sure to remain undefeated and make nobody yet regret those tattoos. The top prelim of the 5-fight prelim card at UFC Vegas 36 is a flyweight matchup between Molly McCann and Yeon Kim. The charmingly nicknamed Meatball Molly is 31 years old, fighting out of Liverpool. She is a former Cage Warriors flyweight champ. She's 10-4 overall. She is 3-3 since joining the UFC. She is currently on a 2-fight skid, having dropped a unanimous decision to Lara Procopio back at UFC Fight Night Overeem versus Volkov in February, and a unanimous decision to Tyler Santos last July at UFC on ESPN Cater versus Ige. That snapped a 3-fight winning streak for her over Priscilla Cachoeira, Ariane Lipski, and Diana Belbitsa. She's taking on Kim, who returns to action for the first time in just over a year. The 31-year-old South Korean is 9-3-2 overall. Like McCann, she's 3-3 in the UFC. She did lose her last outing, a unanimous decision to Alexa Grasso at UFC Fight Night 175 all the way back last August. This one is about as close to a pick'em as you'll find on this card, but Kim is minus 115, where McCann is minus 105, so not quite even money on McCann, but she is the tiniest of underdogs. Keith, who have you got in this one, and how?
Yeah, this is a really evenly matched. I mean, you mentioned it. You talked about the betting lines. Molly McCann. I feel bad that it's not in the UK. You know, when a fighter is supposed to expect to get homecoming, so I feel bad for McCann. As far as her style, she's a high output on the feet. And that's just because she's just so stinking tough. Like she just walks forward, eats punches. She's surprised. Like even though she's a pretty good athlete, though she doesn't look like she would be. Like she surprisingly has fast hands. She constantly switches stances. She uses good movement on the feet. She likes to stay all the way out and then suddenly just dart into range with like a big combo of like 8 punches. If she gets in the pocket, she's willing just to throw down in the pocket. But she does make the mistake of loading up on everything. She is also very heavy on her lead leg, which obviously gives her more power, but it leaves her open to get destroyed by kicks. I mean, that's Tilia Santos destroyed her with kicks, kicks to the legs, the teep kicks up the middle. She closes the distance. When she closes the distance, she just grinds in the clinch, just stays dirty. She has that classic like UK grinder, like Molly McCann. If she wasn't a fighter, like she could like beat you up in like a brothel. I shouldn't say brothel, but like a pub or something. Like
Yeah,
she get out there like fighting, like beating up a girl. She's a good wrestler, but I'd say she's a bit overrated offensively. Like she'll just grind you and get you down. But if you have any good takedown defense, she's going to struggle to get you down. And I think she's actually a terrible defensive wrestler. I mean, she was taken out 7 times by Lara Procopio in her last fight, 5 times by Tilia Santos. If you put her on her back, she really struggles to get up. I mean, look at the Tilia Santos fight. But she has good cardio. Like even though it's 15 minutes, like she's going hard the entire 15 minutes. Now move over to Kim. Kim is, she's been inactive, so it's hard to really grasp where she is at this point of her career. But she's huge for the weight class. She's tall. She's a high volume striker. Little flat-footed, stands up tall. Besides being tall, she's kind of slow, but she hits hard to her credit. She also likes to throw down in the pocket. She'll eat a punch to land a better one. That's because she trusts her chin. Go back, and she has got a good chin. You go back to her Alexa Grasso fight. Alexa Grasso was teeing off on her, and she just kept going, throwing like combinations or like 6-punch combinations. No kicks though. She kind of headhunts everything she's throwing. She ignores the body. She will battle in the clinch, but Alexa Grasso, who's moving up in weight class, was actually out muscling her, which was really surprising because it was like not only is Alexa Grasso like moving up in weight class at that time, like Kim's big for the weight class. You could see the difference and Erosa still winning the clinch, and she's got weak takedown defense. She was out wrestled by Antonina Shevchenko, so that tells you all you need to know about her wrestling. Though she does have 3 subs on her record. So as far as predictions go, I got no confidence in this pick. I wouldn't be surprised if McCann just out wrestles her, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Kim just gets the fight she wants with feet in the pocket and she just out volumes McCann, which not many people can say they can do. Kim might be the one. That says McCann could also win it on the feet, and she should have the advantage in the wrestling. She just simply has more avenues for victory. So I'm going to take McCann, but with no confidence. So give me McCann by decision.
I certainly couldn't have said any of that better myself. I'm leaning McCann for the same reasons you are. McCann, a decent offensive wrestler in just kind of a grindy way, not a traditional, like outside shot. Terrible defensive wrestler, but I don't think that's going to come into play here against Kim. And like you say, like she has more avenues to victory. I can see her winning it on the feet, and certainly if she does turn to her wrestling, Kim is someone that she can probably get down to the canvas. This should be a really fun fight, and I'm going to go with McCann by decision as well. But again, just should be a really fun one, and it'll be interesting to see what Kim has, after a year on the shelf. The UFC Fight Night 191 main card kicks off with a lightweight matchup between Paddy Pimblett and Luigi Vendramini. Pimblett, the 26-year-old from Liverpool, is a former Cage Warriors featherweight champ. This is his long-awaited UFC debut. He signed with the UFC early this year and proceeded to celebrate by pissing off every fighter he possibly could over social media and interviews. So, polarizing figure, but all publicity is good publicity. He enters the UFC off of a 2-fight winning streak in Cage Warriors, and he's taking on Vendramini, the 25-year-old Brazilian by way of Denver. Is 9-2 overall. He's 1-2 in the UFC. He took a short notice debut against Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos, lost in the second round. But since then, he beat Jason Ayari, and most recently, back in June, he lost a majority decision to Fares Zayam at UFC 263. Pimblett is the slight favorite to get the job done in his UFC debut. He is minus 140. Vendramini is available at plus 120 on the comeback. Keith, who do you like in this one? And obviously, Pimblett, a guy synonymous with Cage Warriors in a lot of ways. I think he might have the most fights in Cage Warriors of anybody. He debuted there when he was 18 years old. I think he has 14 fights in Cage Warriors. Tell me, what you think of his ceiling in the UFC.
Yeah, so Pimblett, like you said, it seems like we've been waiting for him to make his debut in a major organization. And I'm not trying to bash Cage Warriors. I'm talking about like Cage Warriors still the regional. They're regional to the UK. Or Europe, not UK, all of Europe, I should say. Not one that's more on the global stage. But it seems like we've been waiting for him to either make it to UFC or Bellator or something like that forever. I mean, not many people, this is kind of following us, not many people, while they're fighting in Cage Warriors, is getting interviews with Ariel Helwani, who is probably the 3rd biggest media member in the world of MMA, besides me and Ben as 1 and 2. Yeah. Well, besides us two, like he's the next guy. Like not many people get interviews with him before you're in the UFC. There's not many fighters in the UFC that can get an interview with Ariel Helwani, and Paddy Pimblett is a regular.
Yep.
Now, you asked me what is his ceiling. Well, his ceiling could be huge. I mean, the guy's 26 years old, so he's hardly a finished product. What I like about him coming in, I think he's got 19 or 20 professional fights, and you mentioned he's been in Cage Warriors forever. He's also been in high-profile fights, like not necessarily like the highest competition. He's faced good competition, Julian Erosa, Soren Bach. Like there's been some Nadna Armani. There's been some good guys that he's fought, but he's been in so many fights that has gotten a lot of media attention, a lot of attention by fans. So and just big pressure situations. So I don't think his UFC debut will have a big phase. I'm like, I don't expect him to get octagon jitters. He seems to embrace the kind of this excitement. He kind of reminds me of Dylan Danis in the fact that he's polarizing. Some people love him, more people hate him, and he's a grappling wizard.
Yep,
it's kind of Dylan Danis. But hold on, in fairness, he's not the grappler that Dylan Danis is in the grappling world. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the comparison is perfect. So don't at me. Also, I understand he has, like I just talked about, how many professional fights he had compared to Dylan Danis. I'm not saying I'm talking about the personalities. So it was close enough. I'm sure there's somebody else's better comparison. Anyways,
also Pimblett fights in a real weight class where Danis just fights whoever Bellator will find to make 175.
Yeah, it's a Danis weight class. So on the feet, he's a pretty limited boxer. That's an era that he needs to grow in. Not a lot of power, but recently he's a good athlete. He's pretty elusive. We've seen that. We've seen a lot more kicks, like throwing good kicks. His last fight, he started throwing a really beautiful question mark kick that he was landing. Occasional flying attack, though he does drop his hands, leave him open to counter strike, especially if he throws naked leg kicks. He backs straight up. He definitely wants to grapple. That's his forte. More of an upper body clinch, get on your upper body, trip you. Not a power wrestler. Like, he's not going to run through your hips. He's more of a guy who's just going to create a scramble, try to get something going. And he's got a weak takedown defense. I haven't come to the conclusion that he's a weak defensive wrestler, or is he just a guy that he wants to get the fight at the ground, so why fight it? You know, like he allows it, which a lot of top grapplers do. But if it's the ground, slick back takes, he's very flexible. He is a submission threat. He chains stub attempts together well. Move on to Vendramini, or Minia, however you say his name. He's only 25 himself. And his wins, he's got a perfect finish rate. He's well-rounded. I really like his head movement. He has very bob and weave style. We started his last fight. He bounces his head off the center line. He throws hard. He loves his overhand right. He showed good power in his last fight when he hurt Faris Zayem, or how you say his name, a very good striker. He hurt him, almost knocked him out. He throws a lot of power shots if he gets in the pocket. He tends to reach a little bit, though, leaving him open to counters. I don't know if Paddy Pimblett's the guy that could hurt him on the feet to make him pay for those. A lot of leg kicks. He's got a fast high kick. He's also like Pimblett, where he doesn't have great entries, though. He tends to get on the hips and then doesn't drive through. And that's probably a guy that, and I've said this many times in jiu-jitsu, like, you see them drill. They're like, all right, 5 minutes of drilling takedowns, and it's not really drilling. It's like reaching for a leg, lifting it up in the air, and that's about it. So I think that's kind of what happens with him. He hasn't got tied up you see Chad Mendez doing driving through with ropes on him and stuff, or the bungee cords. Like, he hasn't done those. That's why he doesn't have the drive. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, though. If he's on the ground, he advances position, good ground and pound. He does have 4 submission wins of his own, and he's got good cardio. We've seen it many times on the regional scene and his last fight. If it's not many times on the regional scene, but his last fight, and I've seen it other times where he presses hard. He presses hard the whole fight when he gets going. So, as far as prediction goes, the first question you asked me was, what is the ceiling of Paddy Pimblett? I don't know if I can give you the answer to the ceiling, but I'll give you the answer what his floor is. And honestly, I don't think it's that high. I've never really understood the hype of this guy. He's been matched up against 4 or 5 good quality guys, and he lost most of those fights. That Narabani, Saran Bach. A lot of people thought he should have lost to Julian Erosa. This is a winnable fight for him, and I do think he's UFC level. I don't expect to see him in a title fight or anything like that. But like I said, this is a winnable fight for him. He is the favorite, but I'm going with Luigi. I know Twitter's been saying, like, yeah, his striking is really bad, but he's only 26. He should improve. Yeah, I agree. But his opponent's 25, who isn't really known for his striking. He's even younger, and his stand-up can improve. And I actually think I've seen more of his stand-up, and he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt himself. I think this fight might look a lot like, well, hold on. Last week we had Vanessa Demopoulos. So she fights very similar to Paddy Pimblett. Like, weak scrambler, really good on the if he gets to the ground, can throw up submission attempts, a lot of kicks, and I wasn't that high on Vanessa Demoblis. I'm not throwing, I'm not throwing Paddy Pimblett in that group where I said, there was like a group of guys where I say they got good submissions, but then they're a weak wrestler and they have no stand up and prove me wrong. Like, I'm not throwing him in that. I think he's better than that level of guys. But not much. And you know what? He's going to get some percentages to black belt in his debut. I'm going with the upset. Give me Luigi.
Wow. There you go. One pick for the debut of Paddy the Baddy to be spoiled. I was surprised that they matched him this tough out of the gate, because Vendramini he's a decent fighter. Like, he gets a complete mulligan on debuting on short notice against a decent sized welterweight. Like what was going to happen. But it's not just that he's a decent fighter, but as you pointed out, his strengths match up well with Pimblett's. He's not a guy that Pimblett is just going to be able to dummy on the ground, or if he is, well, that tells us something else about Paddy Pimblett. I like that you pointed out that Pimblett he's a pretty good athlete, because I tagged him as a minus athlete maybe 4 years ago when the word started to get out around, and I'm like, this is kind of like a skinny baby of a guy. He is pretty like flexible and wiry, but he's not strong. He's not terribly fast. He's grown into his body in his mid 20s, and he's kind of a deceptive athlete at this point. He's a guy that I bet by the time he's 30, like, there'll be no question of him ever dropping back down to featherweight. I can totally see the upset happening here. This is a bit of a trap fight for Pimblett, and the guy's mouth has been writing checks all spring and summer that his body's now going to have to cash. Like, there's going to be either like glee and or tears on Twitter after this fight. But I am going to go with Pimblett to get the job done. Not hugely confident in it, and I don't think he's going to find the submission. But give me Pimblett to just win enough scrambles, have Vendramini in some peril on the ground, and win at least 2 out of 3 rounds. So I have Paddy Pimblett by decision, but very interesting fight, and I think we'll know a lot more about his floor and ceiling probably about 5 minutes into this thing.
Yeah, didn't he get into it on Twitter with Topuria?
With who? Yeah, no, he got into it with every Georgian fighter. Yeah, no,
but like specifically Topuria, like, is there a worse stylistic matchup for him than Topuria?
Oh, like Topuria, who is, the same stripe of fighter stylistically, but is a physical tank. Oh, that's a terrible, terrible matchup for Pimblett.
And before we move on, have you seen this Sean Strickland, Dylan Danis trash talk? Speaking of Dylan Danis trash talk, yeah, do yourselves a favor. Don't leave the show now. Okay. Or if you do, just pause it. If you guys, if listeners at home, just pause it. Maybe share it. Tell your friends about it. Write a nice review. Put a nice comment. But then when you're done, go to Instagram and look up Dylan Danis, or just Google it. You'll find it somewhere. Sean Strickland, Dylan Danis. Sean Strickland gives the scariest trash talk of all time. It's like Hannibal Lecter, like serial killer, scary, but fantastic, by the way. It's absolutely fantastic, but yeah, just check.
No, he's got an edge to him. He's a guy that if he didn't have fighting, he is not the guy you'd want pouring your latte at Starbucks, or like selling you tires at the Costco. Like, he is a guy with sociopathic tendencies who needed an outlet for it. Like, thank God he has fighting. You know what I mean? Because you're a cop.
Yeah. Like, you're at Walmart, and he's like stocking the shelf, and you're like, hey, I always see smooth peanut butter. You have crunchy, and then he just flips out and just like kicks you in the nuts and like, what? No, nobody likes crunchy, and then just like Muay Thai plum clinches you and just to oblivion. No, actually, it's Sean Strickland. So all he does is just jab you in the face like 10 times in a row.
You're so bloody. Next up, it is a light heavyweight contest between Modestas Bukauskas and Khalil Rountree. Bukauskas, the 27-year-old Lithuanian training out of England, is 11-4 overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC as yet another Cage Warriors champion. He won his UFC debut over Andreas Michailidis. Since then, he has lost 2 in a row to Jimmy Crute and then to Michal Oleksiejczuk back in March. That one a fairly controversial split decision. Overwhelmingly, media and fans seem to score that for Bukauskas, but nonetheless, he finds himself on a 2-fight skid. He'll be taking on Rountree. The 31-year-old American is 8-5 with 1 no contest. As a pro, he is 4-5 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of the 23rd season of The Ultimate Fighter. He is also on a 2-fight losing streak, having lost a quick one to Yeon Kutalaba all the way back in September 2019. Came back this January and dropped a unanimous decision to Marcin Prachnio at UFC 257. Odds on this one are fairly close, but Bukauskas is your favorite. He's minus 150. You can get Rountree around plus 130 or so. Now, considering that we're just a couple days removed from finding out that Sam Alvey is going to get a chance to extend his winless streak in the UFC to 8 straight, it might be overstating the case to say that this is a pink slip derby. You know, 2 guys on 2-fight losing streaks. Obviously, for non-contenders, 3 in a row, you and I both remember when that was basically an automatic pink slip. That's not the case anymore, but suffice it to say that neither of these guys wants to be the guy who has to test that. 2 guys really in need of a win. I recall in our preview of, I don't remember which of Bukauskas' fights it was, probably the Oleksiejczuk fight, where I said that he wants to be an out kickboxer and he thrives on controlling the distance. And I just don't think he has the athleticism, physicality to do it to UFC level light heavyweights. I mean, I was proven wrong in that fight. I certainly scored that one for Bukauskas. Here's a guy in Rountree that's really, really going to test that. Khalil Rountree is a Jekyll and Hyde fighter. I think getting signed to the UFC so early, like getting on Tough and getting signed so early as like a 4-0 fighter was the worst thing that ever happened to this guy. It would have been fantastic if he had 10 fights on the regional scene to really continue to hone his craft. But I mean, when you're knocking people out in 40 seconds, just like some of the nastiest knockouts I've ever seen in regional MMA.
Remember when he kicked the guy in the ribs while he was down? like that was one of the most brutal things I've ever seen.
Yeah. But I mean, the guy was thrown into the Shark Tank. He feasts or famines from one fight to the next, and I can't plumb the depths of why. His win over Paul Craig back in 2017, that thing has aged incredibly well, because I mean, for a couple of years after that, I thought, well, you know, that's Paul Craig. You know, you can get him out of there early, or he's going to stick around and, you know, and get the Hail Mary submission on you. No, Paul Craig has turned out to be actually a very good light heavyweight, and he's done it with the exact same skill set he had in 2017. Just he's turned out to be good. Khalil Rountree, like blasting Gokhan Saki, is one of my most surprised moments as a MMA observer. And his win over Eric Anders was one of that's about as wrong as I've ever been about my prediction for a fight. I even, thank goodness I wasn't doing these previews yet, but like on multiple podcasts that week, I was like, oh man, you know, Rountree's talking about how he's been training at Tiger Muay Thai. He took the Thailand fighter vacation. Nobody ever comes back from that thing, you know, better than they left. They just come back with a better tan. And then he made Anders look like he'd never even sparred before. He's now regressed to the mean a little bit. Kutalaba, who's a guy who is like equally physical. Like, you know, Kutalaba is as explosive and strong and athletic as Rountree. And incredibly, you know, he might even be a little more disciplined than the Rountree. You know, he put him away. Marcin Prachnio was able to manage him. I'm just terrified to pick this fight because I don't know which Khalil Rountree is going to show up. If the right one shows up, like, he's stronger, faster than Bukauskas, and not as good a kickboxer, but a comparably solid kickboxer, and that's a nightmare for Bukauskas because his problem is making his game run on better athletes. I can't pick it though. To me, Bukauskas is more of a known quantity here, and because of that, even though I could see Rountree just sawing his legs off or knocking him out, I'm going to take Bukauskas to just win 2 out of 3 rounds of a pretty fun kickboxing fight on the feet. Give me Bukauskas by decision.
Yeah, Khalil Rountree is definitely one of those guys that it should be in Ben's yell at the TV fighters because the guy's so inconsistent. But yeah, like you said, when he came back from Thailand against Eric Anders, he looked incredible. It was one of those guys. It's like when Ian Heinisch came back from Thailand, and suddenly I was like, whoa, where the hell did Ian Heinisch come with this stand-up? Then you never saw it again. So Rountree, southpaw, he's so fast on the feet when he's throwing. Great power, chopping leg kicks, crushing kicks to the body, the liver area. Has huge power. You just look at him; he just looks incredibly strong. But he's so inconsistent. I mean, you go to like the Marcin Prachnio, like getting beat up by Marcin Prachnio, like that was a fight that everyone expected him to win by like walk off face plant knockout, and it was one of those worst fights. He's a horrendous wrestler. If he's taken down, he really struggles to get back up. I mean, Ian Cutelaba stopped him with elbows in their fight. Now, Bukauskas, I know I'm screwed. Modestas, I'll say. I'm really going to mess up his name. Light on the feet, pretty fast. As you mentioned, he's an outfighter. He wants to stay on the outside and pick apart from range. Straight shots down the pipe. Occasional spinning attacks, a lot of calf kicks, weak defensive wrestler himself, but he is good at getting back up. He, excuse me. I am worried about his chin as he was knocked out by Jim Crute as these came up, but he has good cardio. Like he won championships on the regional scene, so he can work hard. I mean, he can go deep into fights, so 15 minutes shouldn't be an issue for him. And another note, I side note that I forgot to mention this, he likes to defend takedowns, but instead of like sprawling out, just elbowing, and it worked twice for him on the regional scene, landing downward elbow knockouts. So that's something to look for. Though I don't expect Khalil Rountree to go for a takedown. You went with Modestas, and I 100% understand your reasoning. I feel the same way about Khalil Rountree as I felt as about making my pick last week with Abdulrazak Alhassan. The safe bet is Modestas. Like my rationale says, like, do you really want to take Khalil Rountree? Like, no, don't do it. Like, what are you doing? Like, even now, I know I'm taking Khalil Rountree, but I'm like, what are you doing? He's gonna lose. But then I just always think about like the highlights, the flashes, the moments he's had, and like the best Khalil Rountree shows up, I think he knocks him out. Like he styles on him. He's moving, he's kicking, and I might have got lucky last week with the Al Hassan pick.
Okay, I am going to interrupt you here. Since Keith is teeing it up for me, I don't want him to have to blow his own horn. So not only is he the only person on this show who picked Abdulrazak Alhassan to beat Alessio Di Chirico, he's the only person in the 15-person Sherdog Pick'em League to pick Abdulrazak Alhassan to beat Alessio Di Chirico. He won the Super Cojones Award last week for being the only one to make the right pick. So let me hand that back to you. But just everybody know that when he's picking Rountree here, there's some method to the madness sometimes.
But you know what my method is? Like I won that bet and I'm at Vegas and I won that bet and I hit up all that money and I have like a big, like I get walk around with those cups full of coins. And everyone's like, "Whoa, look at that guy!" And like your wife's pulling on. I'm like, "Honey, let's go." I'll be like, "No, babe, I can't win. I got a method. I can't. Like, I got this. He's telling my method's working. Look at my cup." And she's like, "No, honey, let's go." And like I'm like, "Babe, we're getting the like presidential suite tonight. Like this is it. Like you're quitting your job next week. Like this is gonna be insane." And then like later on we're like splitting the $3 breakfast because we can't afford it because my method didn't work. So I'm waiting. This is the part where I'm going all in, and the dealer's just smiling at you, saying like, "You idiot! Like you should have left." I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Rountree and screw it. I'm gonna say he knocks him in the first round, just because if you're gonna go big, go big. But yeah, guys, don't follow me on this bet.
There you go.
Give me clear Rountree, first round knockout.
There, we have some dissension at least. We head down to the welterweight division, and it is a matchup between Alex Morono and David Zawada. One that was put together on fairly short notice. Morono was in Las Vegas last week, cornering his man, your tough 29 bantamweight winner, Ricky Tercios. And I guess they just said, hey, you want to stick around and have a fight? Morono doesn't cut much weight. And he said, sure, something like that. At any rate, Morono, the 31-year-old Texan, is 19-7 with 1 no contest overall. He is 8-4 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He had been on a Legends tour recently, dropping a unanimous decision to Anthony Pettis last December, coming back with a first-round knockout of Donald Cerrone at UFC on ESPN 24 in May. He is now taking on Zawada, who I suppose is a legend if you're really into KSW. The 31-year-old German is 17-6 overall. He is 1-3 since joining the UFC back in 2018. Most recently dropped a split decision to Ramazan Amaev at UFC on ABC 1 back in January. Prior to that, he had not fought since late 2019 when he triangle choked Abubakar Nurmagomedov. Odds on this one slightly favor Morono, the short notice step up. He is minus 145. Zawada is plus 125 as the slight underdog. I will say that my only real concern here is like Morono's gas tank. That's it. You know, he's while he's always in, you know, good shape. He runs a gym. And I know that he isn't the guy that like has to start tapering down to cut 25 pounds to make 170. You know, he's not Kamaru Usman from a physical standpoint. You always wonder when a guy's stepping up on like 8 or 10 days notice, how much gas he's going to have. And that's especially the case because Morono is a guy that fights in the first round like a bat out of hell anyway. So if he does that and say he wins a 10-9 first round over Zawada and he's sucking wind in the corner, you can already see, you know, the straightforward decision loss coming. Because otherwise, I think he matches up really well with Zawada. He's Morono, he's a second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but if he has his way, you'll never know it. You know, the man has told me face-to-face, he's like, you know, I'll never be the guy to take it to the ground. I want to slug it out. But having said that, I think that'd be his best route to victory against Zawada. Zawada's got some holes in his game, but he's a big, strong guy. You know, definitely more of a physically imposing guy than Morono is. He can crack on the feet, and he can crack on the ground. You know, he got some nasty ground and pound, but he's a hard hitter on the feet. You know, kicks as well as punches, but he really, what he wants to do is punch. Like he had some highlights with like high kicks and stuff in KSW, but when he's happiest is when he's punching. And if Morono spends too much time in the danger zone there with him, like he's gonna get the worst of it. But yeah, in a close fight, I am gonna lean towards Morono here, not just because he's a bud, but just, you know, I think it matches up well. I'm gonna, you know, go on faith that, you know, he's in decent shape for this, and I expect him to probably win the first 2 rounds and then have to hold on in the third and hope not to get finished or 10-8'd. But give me Alex Morono by decision.
Yeah, so what a really weird matchup. Like Alex Morono gets the best win of his career, and instead he gets rewarded with a short notice fight against David Zawada. Yeah, so Morono, he's just fun, dude. Like you're right. He's not the most technically sound. He'll never win for a title. Knocking out Cowboy Cerrone is gonna be the highlight of his career. Which is I'm glad for a guy like that. Like we said that on the recap show. I'm glad for like and I don't mean as an insult, but like UFC journeyman,
Mhm.
to have this moment for the rest of his life. He gets to, one day he'll show his kids, look, oh, the guy has the most wins in the UFC, but didn't have a win against me, like that's fun bragging. Um, but so as far as his style, like he's fun, like he's a wild man. I said that last time. He's a high output brawler. He wants to throw down power shots all the time. He doesn't have massive power, but I would say he does have plus power. He unloads on every punch, but when he wants to just slip and rip, like he's pretty smooth. He's pretty elusive. Solid leg kicks, which is a big part of his game. You mentioned he has a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Doesn't use it nearly enough. He's not a great wrestler. Probably a weak defense wrestler. You go back to and I've mentioned this fight a long time because it's probably his worst showing over a 15-minute period was probably the Jourdain fight where he kept getting
Yep.
taken out and he couldn't really get back up. But he is crafty. Like he's got a little bit of a Gerald Mearshot, not in the sense of like getting submission, but just being a veteran who does like, or maybe actually probably a better comparison might be who's the other guy that I always pick against, the guy that was out forever. He just fought. Yeah, I picked against him again. He's got he lost to Gregor Gillespie, but that was like it. He beats everybody else. What's his name? One of those guys. My whole point is he's one of these veterans that is much better than like I expect. And every time he wins, I'm like, oh man, Alex Morono's better than I give him credit for. I don't like that he's taken this fight on short notice, but Alex Morono's done it before, and he's such a veteran that he knows what he needs to do to be prepared for a fight for 15 minutes. That it's not like a guy making his UFC debut coming in, so it doesn't bother me as much as other guys. Now Zawada, he's also a high volume guy. He presses the action. He marches forward. He throws hard, busy jab. He just blitzes with high big combinations. Also has good calf kicks. Not much of defense though. Gets hit a lot. Just has a Tito Ortiz style of kind of pillaring, but not rolling with the punches at all. But if he gets inside, strong clinch game, loves knees in the clinch. He will go for a takedown. But though he is a terrible wrestler, I mean, you saw that in his last fight where he kept getting taken. That was the difference in the fight. But good get-up game. He was hard to hold on. And he's an aggressive grappler on the ground. If he's on top, he advances position, and he gets submissions. We saw that against the Nurmagomedov. He can pull off submissions off his back. He almost had a submission in his last fight. Well, I shouldn't say almost had a submission, but he was throwing up triangle attempts in his last fight. As far as wins, this is my fight of the night pick. I think, like when I was doing tape study on Zawada, I actually think he's better than his record shows. Like I watched him, like wow, like his last fight against Ramazan was like really competitive and I didn't expect it to be. But Moreno has really faced some tough competition. Overall, this is probably a step down in competition for him. I think Zawada's going to give him everything Moreno can handle, but I think Moreno's just slightly better on the feet where I expect most of it to be. Give me Morono to win a decision in an absolute war.
There you go. 2 picks and a fight of the night pick for the welterweight Vince Pichel, Alex Morono. The co-main event of UFC Fight Night 191 is a heavyweight matchup between Tom Aspinall and Sergey Spivak. This one, second fight in a row that was put together on fairly short notice, as Aspinall had been scheduled to fight Sergey Pavlovich. Pavlovich was forced to withdraw, and in steps other Sergey Spivak. I will say this: it is a sign of the health of the UFC heavyweight division that on short notice they managed to make another fight between 2 heavyweights in their 20s who are in the top 15. Like that's just something that you wouldn't have been able to do pretty much at any point in the existence of the UFC heavyweight division. Just the fact that we didn't get he's not around anymore, but we didn't get like another like Junior Dos Santos dragged out of the grave, to fight one of these guys. Aspinall, the 28-year-old from Manchester, is 10-2 overall. He is a sterling 3-0 since joining the UFC out of Cage Warriors. He's beaten Jake Collier, Alain Baudot, and most recently, back in February, Andrei Arlovsky, whom he absolutely ran over on the way to a second-round rear naked choke. Spivak, the 26-year-old Moldovan, is 13-2 overall. He is 4-2 in the UFC. He is on a 3-fight win streak. Since his last loss, which was a unanimous decision to Marcin Tybura, he's beaten Carlos Felipe, Jared Vanderaa, and most recently, just back in June, Alexei Oleinik, over whom he took a pretty one-sided unanimous decision. Nonetheless, odds on this one do favor Aspinall. He is minus 270. You can get Spivak at plus 230. My thought here is I loved the Pavlovich fight. I thought that was if either guy won that fight convincingly, you could have put me down for, yeah, I'll take them to probably get the heavyweight title shot at some point in the next couple of years. I still like this fight. Like I say, as replacement short notice fights go, especially in the heavyweight division, this is really good. Problem is, Aspinall is an absolutely miserable style matchup for Sergey Spivak. Like, I didn't think Spivak was UFC material early on. You know, he lost 2 of his first 3. He lost to Walt, got knocked out by Walt Harris in seconds, just got soundly out-wrestled by Marcin Tybura, and in between, he beat Tai Tuivasa on the ground, which, especially back in 2019, just no great shakes. I've been proven wrong. Spivak is absolutely a UFC-level heavyweight, and a decent one at that. Like I say, he's hovering around the edges of the rankings, but he, at his heart, is a grinder who wants to wrestle, wants to get his opponent down, wants to beat him up on the ground. He will take a submission. I mean, technically, he has more submissions than knockouts, but it all runs off of him beating you up on the ground and then either taking your neck or just continuing to punch you. The problem is that he has no answers when he can't do that. I picked him to beat Marcin Tybura just because I could not stand Tybura at the time. He was on such a miserable run. And we're just talking about last February, like right before COVID. And I was wrong. Just Tybura was too big, too strong. Spivak couldn't win the wrestling, and he had nothing for him. Here against Aspinall, he is going against a guy who is a remarkable athlete by the standards of a heavyweight. I mean, he doesn't cut a bathing suit figure like Ciryl Gane, like he wasn't built in the lab to steal your girl. But for a guy who's the size of a house, like, 6'5", 255, 260, he is light on his feet, just a big framed guy who nonetheless is like really coordinated and quick on the feet as well as on the ground. Like we all saw against Arlovsky, just, how quick he was in transition on the ground, and how easily he took his back, took his neck. Again, like I like both these guys. I think they are both deservedly ranked heavyweights. I still think the world of Aspinall. I do think of him as a future title contender and maybe not even that far in the future. And he has a really favorable style matchup here. I expect that he's either just going to beat Spivak up badly on the feet and Spivak won't be able to get him down and just Aspinall knocks him out, or Aspinall takes Spivak down and beats him, like TKOs him on the ground or clubs and subs him. But one way or the other, give me Tom Aspinall by second round. I'm going to go ahead and say second round TKO.
Yeah. So this is a great matchup. I think you hit the nail right on the head when you said like the heavyweight division has been better name wise, like been bigger names, when Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir and these guys were in it, and Randy Couture and this and that. But the health of the division is so good right now because we have this influx of young guys, which we probably haven't had since Josh Barnett, Andre Arlovsky, Tim Sylvia, like that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I mean, I might be forgetting a couple guys, but overall, you get what I'm saying. Tom Aspinall, I mean, this guy is just getting finishes in the UFC. He's a big dude. As you said, he's 6'5". He's so athletic. He's athletic for any weight class, but especially heavyweight. Quick, good movement, light on the feet, hits extremely hard. He's a good boxer. And this is the guy that was boxing with Tyson Fury, getting Tyson Fury ready for fights. I mean, that right there speaks for itself. And guys, I'm not a boxing guy, but if I knew who Tyson Fury is, that speaks a lot. Changes stances, accurate strikes, can mix in takedown. He's a good grappler. As you mentioned, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And then he submitted former UFC champion Andre Arlovsky in his last fight. Move over to Spivak. Spivak, kind of the complete opposite. He's unathletic. He's flat-footed, but he just one of these guys that has somehow gotten everything out of his athleticism, and I love that. Like, he's got a decent jab. I mean, you go back to his Carlos Felipe fight. He pieced up Carlos Felipe, straight punches down the pipe, throw some hard kicks. Defensively, he got some holes. He just kind of pillars to defend shots, but good takedowns, solid entries. He loves that snatch single. Will grind against the cage if you defend takedowns. He likes lateral drops, which I hate, but he likes doing it. Solid ground and pound on top. And I think beating Alexei Oleinik spoke a lot. Like, that was his first big win. He got in some trouble at times, but was able to clearly win a decision, get past that hump, kind of proving that he's not a C-level heavyweight, that he is a guy that deserves co-main event slots. But he's taking this fight on short notice. And heavyweight's a division that you probably can take a little bit on short notice because it has a lot more power. But remember, Spivak has a style where you need cardio because he's gonna grind. So you wonder, was this a good decision or not? Now, as far as prediction go, both guys are young. Spivak is much better than I first thought he would be. But I see one of these guys as a top 15 ceiling kind of guy. I see another guy as a true title challenger who even has an outside chance. Outside, like, I'm not predicting, but an outside chance of winning the championship. Like, I wouldn't be shocked. I bet by my breakdown, you guys know which one I'm saying has a ceiling of a top 15 and which guy has a ceiling of even winning the heavyweight championship. I like Aspinall. I think Aspinall styles on him. I think he uses movements. I think he knocks him out too. I think he knocks him out. Spivak might be able to close the distance in kind of waste moments in the fight, but when they're at distance, Aspinall's going to style on him. I think he's going to take a while, kind of beat him up, and knocks him out in the second round. And Aspinall, you said, like, was he like negative? Was it 245 or something like that?
More than that. It's minus 270. Yeah,
oh, 270. Okay. If it gets like negative 225, negative around that, I would bet on Aspinall at that margin. But as far as my best bet, right now Aspinall is negative 160 to win inside the distance. This guy, he's stopping everybody. I think Spivak versus Arlovsky is probably about equal skill level at this point, or range, and he made Arlovsky. And I know obviously we're talking about one of the oldest guys in the division versus the youngest, younger guy in the division. I understand it's not equivalent, but I mean, like, levels right now, they're about the same. And Aspinall clowned on him at negative 160. That's my best bet. I think that's a good bet. Him by TKO is plus 150. You actually get return value on that. I don't know if I'm not saying that's my best bet, but that's not a bad bet. Before we move on to the main event, I do want to say, if you do bet, please bet responsibly. Don't bet your house. Don't do any of that. Someone messaged me and asked me why I always say that. Like, well, the reason I said that is because I've actually known someone who was addicted to gambling. So, just my own moral thing. I'm not against gambling, but I just want to say, if I am going to put out betting, to please do it responsibly. Anyways, so that's my bet. I like Aspinall. I think and not only do I think Aspinall, I think, like, after this win, he's got, like, his next fight should be like a main event.
Well, I think you might be right. And hey, the UFC is going to want to go to the UK at some point. With that, we come to the main event of UFC Fight Night 191. It is a middleweight scrap between Derek Brunson and Darren Till. Brunson, the 37-year-old North Carolinian, is 22-7 overall. He's 13-5 in the UFC. He is currently on a 4-fight winning streak. Those coming over Elias Theodorou, Ian Heinisch, Edmund Shabazian, and most recently Kevin Holland, whom he defeated by unanimous decision in the main event of UFC on ESPN 21 back in March. He'll be taking on Till. The 28-year-old from Liverpool is 18-3-1 overall. He is 6-3-1 in the UFC. He is 1-1 since moving up to the middleweight division. At middleweight, he defeated Kelvin Gastelum by split decision back in November of 2019, then dropped a unanimous decision to Robert Whittaker in the main event of UFC on ESPN 14 last July. It is now 13 months later, and he returns to the cage in the main event of this card. Till is the slight favorite here. He is minus 180, where you can get Brunson plus 155 or so as the underdog. Now, Keith, I am going to throw this to you for your analysis and pick first, but something I want to throw out there is I am shocked that Derek Brunson is the underdog here. I wrote in a column that went up on Sherdog this week that Till's record now this is now 2 divisions where he settled in as a top 10 contender, and at welterweight even fought to a title shot, where it's built on a bit of smoke and mirrors and the eyeball test. His best win at welterweight, and again, we're talking about a guy who made it to a title shot against Tyron Woodley. His best win at welterweight, depending on what you prefer, is either a complete robbery over Stephen Thompson in a fight in which he missed weight by 3.5 pounds, or knocking out Donald Cerrone, which, hey, Cerrone's a great name, but that was Cerrone's 3rd loss in a row at welterweight. Like that. That's it. That's what his resume at welterweight is built on. He moves up to middleweight. He won a split decision over Kelvin Gastelum, which, to be fair, it didn't feel like a split decision. Like, he beat Gastelum. But that has not aged particularly well, as Gastelum's gone like 1-3 since. And then there's no shame in losing a competitive fight to Robert Whittaker. He's pretty much the consensus number 2 guy in the division right now. But that's what his resume is built on, to come in as a favorite over someone in Brunson who's been a pretty reliable top 10 contender in this division for like 5 years. And Brunson doesn't really even have any bad losses in that stretch. Like, I'm mystified by it. And I mean, I'm kind of tipping my hand as to where I'm leaning towards the fight, but kind of let me know where you see Till settling in this middleweight hierarchy, and give me your take on the fight.
Yeah, sorry if I seem distracted by that. I was trying to pull up MMA decisions for the Stephen Thompson fight, but the ads were popping up and I couldn't do it. And
it was like, I looked at it yesterday. It was like 3 people who scored it for Till and like 20 who scored it for Thompson.
Yeah, so I'll say this. I don't think it was a robbery.
Okay.
Thompson. I mean, I get no issue. I was trying to see if I scored it. That's why I was actually going to see where I scored it, because I didn't watch that fight in preparation for this one. I just remember it being like both guys staring at each other for large moments of time, and actually Till was the one who dropped Thompson. No, I understand that wins him the 5th round. I understand that.
The real robbery was of anybody who paid money to see it.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't at me like, oh, Stephen Thompson. He maybe won. It's been a long time. I remember everyone being outraged and me not being outraged by the decision. I feel like it was one of those ones, like, it's in England and it went to Till because it was in people saying it went to Till because it was in England, but if it was in like Dallas and it went to Till, it wouldn't have been as big of an outrage. Anyways, you said that his win over Kelvin Gastelum didn't age well. Yeah, that's 100% true. His loss to Jorge Masvidal hasn't really aged that well either. But the loss that really hasn't aged well is the loss to Tyron Woodley. Now, that one has not aged well at all.
That's the only time in like the last 4 years of Woodley's career that he looked that good. And, you're absolutely right.
And I'm joking. I know that was definitely Woodley's best win in a long time, and I understand he was a champion at that time. And I'm just making a Jake Paul joke. I don't think, obviously, Tyron Woodley is beyond shot at this point. I will say this: you said you were extremely surprised that Derek Brunson wasn't favored. I will say this: I'm surprised that Darren Till is this big of a favorite. Not that he's favored, because one, sometimes the bigger name, and I think Darren Till is the bigger name, will get a little extra betting. What's the opening line for this fight? Do you have that available by any chance?
Yeah, it opened. Brunson was plus 115. Till was minus 138, and it's moved wider. Yeah,
which means people have been betting on Till, and I understand that. Even 130, like I'm a little surprised. Being the biggest thing for me is how inactive Darren Till has been, and yeah, I understand COVID had some issues with that. changing of scenery for this card had some things with that. But also injuries have had a lot to do with that. He's been injured. And that's one thing that I don't think we stress enough. Like we talk about other like, all right, right now it's football season is about to kick off a week from now. And during, I bet you a lot of our listeners also play fantasy football. Me and Ben play fantasy football. We won't talk about what happened at the Super Bowl last year when me and Ben faced in the Super Bowl. And I'm not exaggerating, I had 100-point lead. And somehow he had like 4 players left, and all 4 players scored like 35 points, or 3 players. I think I don't know. Somehow I still can't believe I lost. Anyways,
it was my Woodley over Till moment. It was just my one moment of glory.
Oh my Lord! I felt it was like, to me, I felt like it was Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen. Like I won this thing. I'm winning. I'm over by 100 points. This is like the easiest championship I had. I don't remember which players you had, but they all went, every single one. I'm like, all 3 of them need to drop 40 points on me, and then all 3 of them did. Anyways, back to this. What I was gonna say, the reason why I brought up fantasy football is, like, when you drafting fantasy football, like, we bring up injuries. If a guy was injured last year, it scares a lot of people away. But like MMA, we don't do that unless you're Dominic Cruz and you've been out for 4 years. We talk about injuries, but if you're out for a year, we don't really ignore like these injuries never happen, and that's something I think we really need to look more at. And that's probably something me and Ben need to look more at, and just MMA in general, because obviously, I mean, if injuries hurt basketball players and baseball players and soccer players and, insert sport, it also hurts MMA. Anyways, back to this, just in a style of Darren Till. One thing I like about Darren Till moving up to middleweight is he's big for middleweight. Like how he made welterweight. Well, I know Ben's going to insert a joke like he didn't make welterweight, but the times that he did is shocking, because he looks like a light heavyweight. Like he looks. It might have been that I was breaking down fights, and one of the fights 2 of the fights he went against at middleweight was Kelvin Gastelum and Robert Whittaker, 2 smaller middleweights. So maybe that's why he looks so big. And now Derek Brunson's a true, bigger middleweight, so he's not gonna have the big advantage. But that's just something that stood out. So as far as his style, obviously he's southpaw. He uses feints really well, a lot of feints. I think he's fast. I think he's fast in middleweight. I think he's a good striker from distance and mid range. He not so much in close, but like outside striker. He's very good at picking up his opponent's timing. I go back to his last fight against Robert Whittaker. He landed a beautiful elbow in the first round as Whittaker tried to do what Whittaker does with those quick like blitzes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Where he caught him. He hits hard. He dropped Robert Whittaker in that fight. He go back to Stephen Thompson in the 5th round. He dropped Stephen Thompson. Like those are 2 of the better strikers in the UFC. I know someone will say, well, Robert Whittaker always gets hurt. So, yeah, okay. I agree with that. I'll give you that. But Stephen Thompson does it. Like hitting Stephen Thompson's a good accomplishment. His straight left is accurate. He loves his right hand uppercut, which he uses when guys try to shoot on him. Like anytime Robert Whittaker was dipping, he was trying to time it with a front uppercut. It's a punch that he landed. I can't remember who else it was that he landed that lead up. I should have wrote this down. I apologize. But he landed another clean lead uppercut. Just something, talking about unutilized strike. There's an unutilized strike is uppercuts in MMA, especially when you're going against a wrestler. Negatives though, he hangs his hands a little low. He can be a little low not little low, but like a very low output at times. You go back to the Stephen Thompson fight where they just looked at each other. They were extremely gun shy, and that's because Till looks for the perfect blow. He wants that Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, one punch, walk off. He wants those. And he's had those. But the as you mentioned, I think Donald Cerrone was his best win because of how it went down. Because he put on like, wow. And that was at that time, that was a good win over Donald Cerrone. Another thing he does lead with his chin. He kind of sticks his chin out there a little bit. He was dropped in his last fight again by Robert Whittaker. He also doesn't check leg kicks. He's a very Conor McGregor style where he has a wide open base, which generates so much power. And because he keeps his hands low, he sees everything, and he throws from different angles, so he lands shots that a lot of his opponents don't see. So it has such a plus. And then obviously the wide style really makes you sit on your punches so you can generate power. But the negative, and we've seen in Conor McGregor, is your legs are wide open for kicks. That's something that Robert Whittaker did extremely well in their fight. He also had no answer for Tyron Woodley's takedowns. And he really struggled to get up from Tyron Woodley. Tyron Woodley took him out on the ground. But to his credit, Rob Whittaker, who's also a good wrestler, who actually is a guy that we've always talked about, doesn't use his wrestling enough, tried using his wrestling several times against Darren Till. And it wasn't to the 5th round that he actually finally got a takedown on Darren Till. And he popped right back up, to his credit. Now move over to Derek Brunson. He's also southpaw. I don't know what I'm getting with him, because I still feel like he should be a yell at the screen guy, but he seems like he's changing that narrative. I mean, you go back to the Edmund Shabazian fight. I wrote this down. I want to say it again, like how composed on the feet he was. And that's usually not him. He is a little flat-footed. He drops his hands. He can get wild. He can throw from his hips. Much different than Darren Till. Like Darren Till throwing from his hips, he's throwing with accuracy. Brunson is throwing from his hips. That's not his plan. He's losing composure when he's throwing from his hips. He can tend to overthrow, almost knock himself over when he throws. But he lands hard when he does. And and that's the negative about being unorthodox. The positive is because he does some things unorthodox. Like, for example, he does a lot of I said this last time, there's a lot of same side attacks, which means like he'll throw like a jab and then throw, he's southpaw, so he's throwing a right hand jab, and then he's throwing like a high kick on the right side right afterwards, which is so rare. But because of that, it lands because people don't expect it. It's just something that most people don't do. He also leads a lot with his power hand. He doesn't throw a lot of jabs, leads with his straight left. He can be a little left hand happy. Some negatives, he can be pressured back. He likes being the bull. Edmund Shabazian had success by going to the body of Derek Brunson. Kevin Holland did hurt Derek Brunson in that fight. I mean, Derek Brunson had to hold on to a fight that he was clearly way ahead. Brunson throws a lot of kicks, which is obviously good to have extra weapons. He's a good dirty boxer. Like, that's actually what position, like, we always think about Derek Brunson getting the takedown, but he's also like, he's very good at just pinning you against the cage and beating you up, making you pay before he gets the takedowns, where he just grind you out. He's a good wrestler. He loves that single leg where he just snatches a single leg, runs the pipe. He's good at, and I said this last time, I want to say it again, he's good at striking when you want to wrestle, and then wrestle when you want to strike. And when he's on top, he's got good ground and pound, but we saw in the Kevin Holland fight, like he can take moments of just resting, but that to me is actually good for him, because he used to be a guy that was a wild man, go a million miles an hour. Now he's kind of being a lot more composed. So as far as prediction goes, doing tape study on both these guys, I'm so much more excited for this main event, and that's something that I encourage people to do tape study, because it makes you more excited heading into fights. I love Brunson's turnaround. Like, we talked about Julian Rosa and his turnaround on this card. Obviously, it's two different things. Where Brunson, I love the fact that Brunson got absolutely styled on by Israel Adesanya, and it seemed like we were kind of almost like a laughingstock moment. And it's maybe this went away from a title shot. Like, it's that good of a turnaround. If he should have a wrestling advantage. It's something we've seen him go to a lot more lately, is his wrestling. And he could win just simply grinding out 50 minutes. I don't think he can, though. Till is a better defensive wrestler than we've seen. And when I was watching film on Darren Till, I'm going to greatly disagree with you. You said Darren Till don't like that good. I agree with that. Like, that was kind of narrative that I was throwing out there. Like, man, what has he done? Has he been that great? And then I started watching his film, and I'm like, wow, he's a much better striker than I remember. And then I started watching the fight against Rob Whittaker, and I was like, this fight is much closer than I remember. I had a 2-2 heading into the last round, and the 5th round was really close until, like, Whittaker won it and he got some takedowns. But, like, I just didn't remember it being that close. Derek Brunson, I still think he can make moments where he over pursues. I don't like that Kevin Holland hurt him, and Darren Till's a much bigger puncher than Kevin Holland is. I hope Till lets his hands go, because there's a chance he just doesn't let his hands go. But I think he does, and I think he's going to have a big statement. I'm going to take Darren Till. I'm going to say he knocks out Derek Brunson. I'm going to give Darren Till by 2nd round knockout.
Wow. Okay, we definitely have some dissension then. Like, as I prepared for this, I got more and more excited for it as well. The more of their footage I watched, I'm looking at it from, Yeah, I mentioned coming in, obviously, that Brunson is on a 4-fight winning streak since the loss to Israel Adesanya. Against Elias Theodorou, he was a slight underdog. Against Ian Heinisch, he was almost a 2-1 underdog.
Oh my God.
Against
I remember
Edmund
that.
Shabazian, he was almost a 3-1 underdog.
Oh my Lord.
Like, as he keeps winning,
Yeah,
like, he becomes a bigger and bigger underdog. And
he's
against
almost
Kevin
a
Holland,
2-1 underdog to Darren Till right now.
yeah, and he was an underdog to Holland as well. So this will be the 5th fight in a row where Brunson is the underdog.
Underdog to Holland?
He was the underdog to Holland.
Oh my Lord. You're right. What is he's so disrespected?
Like,
no, you make me want to switch my pick.
Well, and it's I understand it because I wrote Brunson off as well. Like, after he like lost to Robert Whittaker way back in, like 5 years ago now, where he just kind of ran heedlessly at him. Whittaker like knocked his block off. He got lanced by Jacare, and then obviously the Adesanya fight. I was like, okay, the book's written on this guy. I get it. He has some gifts. He's a dangerous guy, but he's just always going to have these lapses in fight IQ. And then he stopped having them. And at 37, he's the best he's ever been. I finally now, and this is something I never would have said 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. I trust that Derek Brunson is going to fight to his best advantage and use his best tools in this fight. I expect that he is going to try to take Darren Till down. I expect that he is going to mash Till into the cage and just wear him out. Hit him with like those annoying little short shots, little knees to the legs. And then maybe try to take him down. I am excited to see, I am excited to see Till's striking. Like, I want to see him against another southpaw. Man, Till is a gigantic dude. And it's not that he's that tall. He's like 6'1". He was a 6'1" welterweight. Like, who cares? That's the same height as Michael Chiesa. That's shorter than Neil Magny. The thing about Till is he is huge. Like, his legs are thick. His shoulders are broad. He's just a huge guy. He doesn't look undersized. I expect he and Brunson are probably going to walk into the cage right around the same weight on Saturday, which, I mean, that gives me a little bit of pause because, yeah, Brunson was able to take Holland down and grind him, but Darren Till is probably 20 pounds heavier than Kevin Holland. As a human being, like Holland, he walks around at like 183. But yeah, like I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I expect that Derek Brunson is going to be the best Derek Brunson he can be, and I think that's good enough to beat Darren Till right now. Give me Derek Brunson by decision. That's it. That's 10 fights, man. What are we going to do with the rest of our evenings? That is the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 191, also known as UFC Vegas 36. Brunson versus Till. Certainly hope you enjoy the program. Yes.
Hey, I know what me and you will do for the rest of our evening.
What's that?
No, I'm talking about on Saturday.
Oh, on Saturday. On Saturday, yeah, we're gonna do a recap right after the main event. And again, this is an early card. I think it'll be done probably by like 10 Eastern time, something like that.
Yeah. What's this? It's at 1:30? Might be like 6:37.
Yeah, because it's a short card. Yeah. So mid-evening recap will be on right after the main event. We will break down all of these fights, kind of talk about what's next, things that we learned, if we got some things right, got some things wrong. It's on the Sherdog YouTube page, and the live chat is always open, so we'll be taking your questions and your comments. I ran it solo last weekend, and that was kind of fun because I got to interact directly with a lot of you, but I think we'll probably make that as much of a part of this as we can going forward. Always love to hear from you guys. We're just two lucky fans who watch a lot of fights, so definitely join us. For Keith Shillan, I've been Ben Duffy. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the fights.